How's it going, everyone? If this is your first time here, my name is Christian. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, college dropout, and a former systems engineer who was able to retire early before I turned 30. On this channel, I break down some of the hard lessons I learned in the military, as well as what worked and what didn't for my wife and I on our journey to financial independence. Disclaimer: this exact strategy is not going to be perfect for everyone, but the lessons that you can learn through managing your finances can be transferred to other areas of your life. Even if you decide to do things a little bit different than I did, you should be able to still learn something that you can apply to your financial journey. That being said, I do think my wife and I were able to do it in a pretty unique way. First, let's talk about FIRE. What is it? FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, and it's all about taking control of your finances to be able to have freedom from the traditional 9-to-5 structure. If you can think forward to what your life might look like in 10 or 15 years from now, do you really want to be waking up on your 50th birthday thinking, wow, only 15 more years until I can retire? FIRE is all about prioritizing your saving and your investing so you can get to a point where work becomes optional, hopefully while you still have a lot of life left to live. The first time I heard about FIRE was back in 2017 on a podcast with this guy, Mr. Money Mustache. Here was this guy that was able to retire before he turned 30, and he made it sound so simple. He and his wife just focused all of their efforts on reducing their expenses as much as possible, and they were both able to fully retire early. When I first heard this, it was like someone opened the blinds in a dark room. My parents raised me to look into investing in real estate or to go to college to try to get some high income job to set myself up for retirement. But here was this guy who first introduced me to the notion that wealth isn't just about what you make, it's about what you keep. Nowadays, this isn't necessarily an original idea, but for me in my early 20s, it made so much sense that there could be a better way than waiting until 65 to retire. So next, we're going to discuss why I chose FIRE as my path to financial freedom and why you might want to as well. When I first started trying to pursue FIRE, all I really wanted was just to not work at some job that I hated, regardless of how much money it was paying. As the years went on, there was other types of FIRE that were sort of developed by the community, and each one has a different framework for the type of retirement that you might want to have. I found a great illustration for the spectrum of each level of FIRE for you to follow along. Don't worry, I'll get into what each type of FIRE means in a minute, but I just wanted to give you a high-level overview first. So you can see below that the further you get on the right of the spectrum, the more expensive you can afford to make your retirement. The important thing to understand is that at every level of FIRE, there lies the opportunity to shed some of the uncertainty that comes with planning for retirement. Regardless of what method you choose, for me, anything was better than sitting in a cubicle for the next 40 years doing some job that I hated. So next, we're going to get into the different kinds of FIRE and hopefully save you from a lot of Googling. Because the FIRE community has created these different types of FIRE that mean you've saved different amounts with a different intention for your retirement, means that there's not really a one-size-fits-all approach. Other than traditional FIRE, the other 4 types of FIRE are Coast FIRE, Barista FIRE, Lean FIRE, and Fat FIRE. Don't worry, we won't go into the weeds on all 5, but I'll give a quick summary of each one and then explain which one I think is the best for most people. I also left some helpful resources in the description of this video in case you want to explore these concepts more in depth, including a FIRE calculator in case you want to check your numbers after you learn about the different types. Each calculator has a short description of that type of FIRE and instructions on how to use the calculator. If you're completely new to FIRE, then Coast FIRE is a great place to start. Coast FIRE is a little bit weird in that it isn't necessarily about retiring early. What it actually is knowing at what point you can stop paying into your retirement funds so they'll continue to grow without additional contributions. So if you absolutely love your job, but you just want to make sure you're set up for retirement in the future, then this is an amazing goal to set. That way you don't have to live off of just a percentage of your income forever if you don't want to. This is what everyone actually reaches first when working towards the other types of FIRE. Wouldn't it be nice to know that by 40 or 45, you could have enough set aside that even if you never saved another penny, you would still be set to retire when you turn 65? Next is Barista FIRE. The point of Barista FIRE is to get to a point that you could work a job that may not pay as much as you make right now, and in some cases may not even fully cover your expenses, but you can make up the difference by using some of the money that you have saved. For example, as the name suggests, you could work at a coffee shop as a barista for a couple days a week part-time and maybe cover 70% of your expenses and use the money you have saved to make up the difference. If you can think of some sort of job or passion project that you've always wanted to do but doesn't quite pay the bills, then this might be the type of FIRE for you. After Barista is Lean FIRE, which can also be called the Minimalist FIRE. It means that the bulk of your focus is actually on lowering your expenses and understanding that you'll have to continue that type of lifestyle into the future after you retire as well. Lean FIRE is actually easier to reach than traditional FIRE, but there probably won't be a bunch of extra money in the budget for luxuries anytime soon. This is actually the type of FIRE that I worked towards from the beginning without really even knowing it. Traditional FIRE, or just FIRE as most people call it, is just having enough money saved that you can retire and your quality of life won't change. This is where the whole FIRE movement started. It means being able to fully replace your job's income with the money you have invested, but but not having to cut back on your whole lifestyle because of it. And finally, fat FIRE, which lies beyond lean FIRE and traditional FIRE. This one I would really say is reserved for really high income earners or people who are comfortable with taking a lot longer to reach their FIRE goal. If you want the retirement of sipping pina coladas 4 times a year at some fancy resort, then this is probably the FIRE for you. Just know it's going to come at a much steeper cost. Early on in my journey, I was perfectly okay with lean FIRE, but I honestly think the sweet spot for most people lies somewhere in between barista FIRE and lean FIRE. What I have found from being retired for a little over a year and reading through communities of other early retirees is that most people don't want to spend their free time just sitting on the couch doing nothing after they retire. At least not for long. Most people have something that they're passionate about, but they just don't have the time to work on it while they work a full-time job. That's why I believe that if you shoot for barista FIRE or lean FIRE, you can remove some of the fear and uncertainty around your finances and then take the time to explore your other interests while you're still younger. And that's exactly what I'm doing with YouTube. Could it make me money one day? Absolutely. But does it need to right now? Not at all. I can build this channel into whatever I want because I know that I have my savings and my investments to fall back on. And if all else fails, and if I ever feel like I'm being stretched too thin financially, I can always just go get another job. Hey, just real quick, if you're enjoying this video and you feel like you're getting some sort of value from it, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit subscribe. Thank you, and back to the video. Really quickly, I just want to touch on some of the sacrifices and the trade-offs that I've had to make so you know what to expect. Another way of saying that you save a large portion of your income is saying that you're living below your means. Ultimately, what this means for most people is cutting back. For me, it meant having a car that wasn't quite as nice, and I never really bought new or fancy clothes, and it definitely limited some of the social things that I was able to do. Now, I don't think that this was a bad thing at all, because for me, it was more important to know that I could have complete control over my time much sooner, rather than being able to go out every week and grab beers with the guys. Or, since I was in the Navy, basically every night. And I still had things that I did enjoy. I never gave up on buying good food for myself because it was something that meant a lot to me and I just didn't want to sacrifice it. But if you're currently spending 100% of what you make, then there's just no way you can retire early. That's just math. So before you continue, ask yourself, am I willing to make sacrifices now to have an earlier payoff? And if you answered yes, then great, FIRE might just be for you. Reaching FIRE is a combination of thoughtful saving, consistent investing, and being mindful about your spending. I focused on increasing my income when I had the opportunities, which usually was through looking at what higher level jobs required and working on the skills to transition for large pay increases. In doing that, I was able to go from working for minimum wage part-time at a community college to more than enough to support my family and invest in less than 3 years. A common myth about FIRE and early retirement in general is that you need to make a ton of money to do it properly. And for me, that just wasn't the case. Most of my career, I made roughly the average US salary, but at some points I was able to save as much as 70% of my income, and my savings never dropped below 20% of what I made. I'm not here to give any sort of direct financial investing advice, but what I can say is that most people who pursue FIRE take their savings and invest it in some sort of low-cost index fund. That allows relatively steady and safe growth, assuming the entire economy doesn't fall apart. And if it does, then we have a whole new set of problems anyways. The biggest thing that I was able to have full control over though was cutting my expenses. No, it isn't a secret, and no, it's not some super sexy solution, but it's realistic, and it was far and above the biggest reason that I was able to retire before I turned 30. To put it into perspective, for the first time in my life, my wife and I are about to move into a home where we don't have some sort of roommate situation. And this is only after I was able to retire. Once you get a basic understanding of FIRE concepts, it can be really simple, but that doesn't mean it's easy to achieve. Your no muscle is going to have to get really, really strong. It's up to you to decide if keeping up appearances with your friends on Instagram is worth not having full control over your time, because there's absolutely going to be sacrifices. You're probably going to question whether it's worth it every single time you get your paycheck. I know I did. Just keep your eyes on what your ideal future looks like, and I promise you can push through. One day you'll wake up and you won't even look at your alarm clock because you'll be the only one choosing where you have to be. I can honestly say that the confidence that I had in myself to see things through has changed my life for the better. I'd say it's worth it. But that's it for this one. If you enjoyed this, then maybe you'll enjoy one of my other videos. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one.